now is this report, big report out tomorrow by Sara Khan. She is the independent social cohesion advisor. A damning indictment is coming tomorrow. We'll get the full report on the police force, but we know a bit of it today, and that's that the police force, the school leadership and local council involved in the Batley Grammar School scandal let down the teacher at the heart of that. He showed a cartoon of Mohammed to his pupils. He was failed by the authorities. He's in hiding. His family's in hiding. He has post-traumatic stress disorder as a result of what has happened. She herself, Sara Khan, is a Muslim raised in Bradford. She's calling on the government to establish legal buffer zones outside schools. What do you think of that? This would ban all forms of protest activity within 150 metres of a school, except striking teachers on picket lines. The review into social cohesion also reveals the scale of intimidation and harassment faced by ordinary British people and how this is leading them to self-censor, to modify their behaviour. Do you feel self-censored? Do you fear you can't just put out and talk about what you want to say? Well, here's a place where you can. It's called talkTV, and the number is 0344 499 1000. Let's get into this with one of my favourite contributors, Clare Muldoon, the broadcaster and commentator. Clare, we just have a bit of this report. We don't know the full thing. It's out tomorrow, and I will absolutely be covering it when I'm covering from Julia Hartley-Brewer between 10 and 1 tomorrow. Good. What do you make of what we know so far, Clare?
I'm very positive about what Sara Khan has actually said in her report. What does concern me, though, is Gove's definition of the new extremism. I think we need to tackle that when that comes out as well. However, what we need to realise is that she has said that the training police officers have been given to deal with complex theological interpretations and beliefs of ethnic minorities was shockingly appalling, shockingly dismal, she said. And I agree. I think when you try and get a police force to police people's intentions, people's thoughts, people's feelings, it's incredibly difficult because there's nothing actually done. There is no actions. It's all in thought, and it's all possibly in speech, which clearly is an action, obviously. But then we must realise as well what's happened in Batley. The Batley Grammar horrific story of the religious studies teacher who was doxed. You know, there was people, men, I have to say it's men, predominantly Muslim men, outside his house, giving him such terrible, terrible times with his children, with his family, and they've practically driven them underground. And I'm so pleased that Khan addressed this in her report, and she interviewed him. And he said, you know, there's been no support given. The school have said they've offered him counselling. What good is that? He was a religious studies teacher, and what happened at the beginning of this story is he showed the Charlie Hebdo cartoon that a teacher in France was beheaded for showing his class. And yet he was doing it. But this class was actually taught for the previous 2 years prior to March 2021 when he lost his job. Now, if you go onto the website of Batley Grammar and their equity, diversion and inclusion part, they say, you know, the Trust recognises its obligations under the Equality Act of 2010 and is committed to promoting the equity and diversity of all those we work with, especially our employees. Now, I have to say that was dated September 2023. Hopefully, they've learned something in all of this, because I think it's absolutely abysmal. And I do appreciate, and I do really want schools not to be able to be protested outside of. It's absolutely shocking. How dare a faction of communities get together and patrol and outlie outside schools that are there for education, that are there for burgeoning minds to teach, to make these children grow up in a society, especially now that Britain is a secular society. And I'll ask your viewers this, Peter, you know, do many of them actually realise that it's Easter coming up this weekend? We celebrate Palm Sunday today as Christians. We've got the whole of Holy Week to come. But I bet you not many of them do. I bet you everyone knows Ramadan's on now.
Well, it's interesting. I wonder how many Easter messages there will be on the boards at King's Cross Station.
We discussed King's Cross.
Before.
Exactly.
Well, Khan's review is apparently going to reveal how the Batley teacher felt totally isolated, as she puts it, abandoned, suicidal, owing to a lack of support from the agencies that should have protected him. It will find that West Yorkshire Police failed to understand the threat he was under. Batley Grammar School mishandled its response and may have made things worse. And Kirklees Council demonstrate.
I really do think they did.
Kirklees Council demonstrated a lack of consideration for him and his family, Clare.
Well, they have done. He's been completely let down. And there's a voluble part of Twitter who keep referring back to, and what about the Batley teacher? It's absolutely shocking in this day and age. Absolutely shocking. And I'm sorry, I keep going on about this. I think the problem that Muslims in this country have, and I think the problem that Muslims in general have, is that they don't have one imam that can actually tell them what to do. Unlike the Church of England, unlike the Catholic Church, unlike lots of different, the Greek Orthodox and the Turkish Orthodox, etc., Muslims don't have one person, one head of their faith that can actually elicit and tell people what they should be doing, or no, you shouldn't be doing that. It just seems an absolute free-for-all in interpretation.
Clare, your point is absolutely correct and very well made. At the same time, people know right from wrong. Intimidating someone and shouting at them and getting them out of their home and so on, leaving someone with PTSD, that's so clearly wrong.
The difference is, Peter, these men that are perpetrating it at the moment are doing it in the name of a religious prophet and a religious book. And that is so wrong, because that's not what Islam is about. It's a very peaceful religion. And yet we see all of this destruction. And how dare they do it in front of schools? How dare they protest? You know, the intimidation of it alone. I mean, we're supposed to be protecting children. The law is there to protect the innocent.
So Clare, you
and
support
it's not working.
So you support this exclusion zone around schools of 150
I do.
150 metres?
110%, Peter.
Okay.
Absolutely, I do.
What about people who would say, well, actually, we shouldn't be putting restrictions on those kind of protests? The freedom to protest is actually, and where we protest and when we protest, is actually one of those freedoms that we in the West hold so dearly. And there are very strong, Islamist states, by which I mean the violent Muslim states, for example, people like Hamas terrorists, for example, who would not want us to have those freedoms. How do you balance that?
Well, I balance it quite clearly, quite squarely at the face of those and the feet of those who are protesting. I am very much for freedom of speech. I'm very much for freedom of opinion. Okay, that's what we have to do in order to breathe oxygen into discussion. We need to have a round table. We cannot drive anything underground. However, a point you well made, Peter, as usual, was the fact that people surely know right from wrong. And this time, it's time and place. Is it suitable to protest outside a school with innocent children? No, it's not. Is it suitable to protest and show your views? Of course it is. But the place has to be correct. You can't do it at the perimeter of a school. It's just not right, and it's not safe.
Clare, do you think anything will change? I mean, we're looking at some of these statistics. I read them out in the introduction. They're so shocking. I actually just want to read them again. 76% of the public have refrained from expressing their views in public owing to fear. This has been witnessed equally online and in person. 60% of respondents claiming it has worsened in the last 5 years. Some of it was so severe. 27% of respondents said it was life-altering. 50% losing or changing jobs. 13% moving house. This is an online survey in October. 1,279 people. These are the same kind of surveys, the same sample size that we use for political polling and all the rest of it. Does that chime with your experience, Clare? Because it certainly chimes with mine.
Well, absolutely it does. And from talking to people, because I talk to people all the time in my job, and the feedback that I get, people will often say, even making a joke, oh, I can't do that. If we're in the pub, oh, I couldn't say that joke at work, or I couldn't do this. People are so frightened. And it's this fear that's driving things underground, and that's not happy, because I would rather deal face to face with someone who makes a remark that perhaps I find offensive, but who am I to take offence at someone's view? Do you know what I mean? There's a nuance there. And I think that I think it started with humour, and it started with people telling people, you can't say that joke, you can't tell that joke. And people are cancelling this cancel culture that Britain is so great at, especially the left-wing faction of society. Oh, you can't do that, you'll offend someone. Well, you only take offence to something if you yourself are offended. It's up to you whether or not
you're absolutely right, Clare. And no one has the right not to be offended.
Exactly.
A fascinating text here from Edward. I think you're going to raise a smile at this, Clare. Clare, get it right. Islam is not a peaceful religion. There's plenty of evidence to demonstrate. Please say what you really think. I mean, I often say, Clare, can you please say what you really think? Because I'm often in doubt as to what your true views actually are.
You're not, Peter. You know I never sit on that fence.
Also true. Listen, thank you very much indeed. That's Clare Muldoon there, the broadcaster and commentator. Thank you for joining us on this. Lots of responses already to this. Thank you very much indeed to everybody who's been in touch. Paul says, you won't read this out even if you are the home of free speech, but be in no doubt the Islamic takeover has begun. Paul, I've just read it out. I respectfully disagree with you in that I think it's Islamism you're talking about rather than Islam per se. They are two separate but related things, and certainly I think there are many, many problems of the pernicious influence of Islamism. We've talked about it a lot on this station and will continue to do so.